Hey there everybody, I am Hero Strain and I am back once again, finally, to bring you a Source Filmmaker lighting tips and tricks tutorial. I went ahead and built this somewhat simple scene. I haven't added any lights yet, so I'm just gonna play it for you just to show you what we're gonna be doing today. Okay, as you can see, this scene has been fully animated with particles and the soldiers fully animated. Not my best animation, this is just for the sake of the tutorial. And as you can see, there are multiple places where a light source would be necessary. For instance, the sparks. The sparks produce their own light, so that's one source on their own. And then the small alarm over here on the far wall will also be a light source, but that'll come in only the times when the alarm is actually sounding. So I'm just gonna dive right into this and just start with the basic lighting for the shot. So I'm gonna enable lighting. As you can see, there's no lights whatsoever in there. So I'm gonna create my first light. I'm actually gonna name the lights. I don't usually name the lights because I'm not that organized, but I do suggest that you do just to stay organized. So this one will be main upper 1, because there will be 2 lights on the ceiling. Put it up here right next to this light I've set up, as close as I can get it, and just bring up the field of view as high as I can. Then I want to bring the shadow filter size all the way down and the attenuation somewhat down, depends on how the lighting is going to work for the rest. So right now I just want to cover all my grounds and bring the shadow filter size down and the radius slightly up. Everything seems to be a little too bright, so I'm going to bring the tone map scale down just a little bit. Now, a word of warning with this tone map scale, it actually turns your particle systems light down, because the particle systems don't produce their own light, so when you turn the tone map scale down, it'll turn the particle brightness down as well. Be wary of that if you want to add particles to a scene that has low tone map scale. So I'm just going to copy and paste this light and rename it Big Main Upper 2. Okay, sorry to name that. Thank you, Source Filmmaker. Now I'm going to place it right underneath this second light. Now I copy and pasted it just because it's a lot faster to get all the settings that I've just put on the first light down, and it's a lot faster than just creating a new light. I'm going to bring the intensity of both of these lights down quite a bit, just so that I can have room for more light. I think around there should do for now. Now I'm going to create another light, and I'll rename this Fill. This will be the light that lightens up all the dark places in the map. So I'm going to make it as big as I can, put it pretty far away, and disable the shadows. Disabling the shadows is probably the most important part, because it wouldn't shine through anything if that was on. So I'm going to bring this down quite a bit, and as you can see right here on the soldier's knuckles, you can see the black spot there. I personally don't like that. I really like to go for the smoothest lighting possible, so I'm going to bring the light up closer to that knuckle spot. So you see now the shadow is not nearly as dark as before, so I want to keep that like that. There we go. I'm actually going to bring down the main upper lights as well. Both of them. There we go. And the fill light here, the intensity is almost all the way down, and so it's kind of hard to get in there and adjust that with how low it is. Now, you could right click on intensity and remap the slider range to make the range a lot smaller and easier to work with, or you can just use a quadratic attenuation and decrease that just a bit to make your light darker, but just a little bit. Okay. Now the next light I'm going to add will actually be a special light that'll go right here on the console and aim straight at the soldier. Now this light will be the one emanating from the console screen itself, and it will be more or less brighter than all the other lights in the scene. So it's a little too bright, so bring down the quadratic attenuation, bring up the radius a bit. The shadow attenuation should be all the way off for this light. And let's give it a strong yellow tint. There we go. Let's bring that quadratic attenuation down a little bit more. Alright, see how that looks. Alright, so we're getting there. It's looking pretty basic so far. So I'm going to rename this light console light. Alright, now we have the main lights in our scene. I think maybe we should also add a rim light to the soldier to fill him out a little bit. And this rim light will actually be perfectly perpendicular to the desk so that it doesn't cast any light on the desk itself. So that only the soldier will be lit and not the console. I want to bring the radius maybe all the way up, depends on what it does to the desk. On second thought, actually, I think I'm going to put this light right behind him, adjacent to the camera itself. But still keep it somewhat low so it doesn't cast too much light on the desk, because I don't want the desk to have another shadow on it. It should only have maximum of 2 shadows, one from the console and one from the top. So let's see, I think maybe we should dim that down quite a bit. Let's actually bring it up. Way up. Alright, I think that looks a bit better. Let's see. Alright, I think that looks pretty good for the main lighting. So that's just the basic overall lighting of the scene. Now I'm going to go in and work on the actual animated lights. First I'm going to rename this light Rim. Okay, so this is the complicated part. So I'm going to scrub around, try to find the part where the first spark happens, right there. And I'm going to add another light. This light will be called Spark. Fairly simple, self-explanatory. Spark will be put right on the spark, obviously. I'm going to give it the biggest FOV possible by scrolling up as far as I can on the mouse. And just to make sure that I'm in the right place, I'm going to turn the light off, position it just where I want it to be. Because I don't want it intersecting with the console itself, because that would remove the shadows, and I do not want that. So I think that'll do for now. Let's rotate it around. Okay. Now these sparks are a slight yellowish color, but just for the sake of the console, I'm going to actually give it more of a bluer tint. So I'm going to remove green and a little bit of red, and we've got some pretty solid blue there. Bring the shadow filter size all the way down, shadow attenuation all the way down as well, and then the radius is going to be up teeny tiny bit, just because the origin of the sparks is way too small to elicit a very large radius. So bring the intensity down to a pretty low solid level. See how that looks. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So now I want to animate the light. So I'm going to go into the graph editor, change the key mode from spline to linear, and then I want to just open up the light and click on just intensity. Now we want to scrub around until we find the first part where the spark is lit, and then go 1 or 2 frames back. Actually, first we want to set the keyframe on the very first spark origin. Press M to set a keyframe, and then scrub back a couple frames. Press M again to create another keyframe. Now I'm going to turn the intensity all the way down, just so that we have that original lighting, and then spark happens. And after the spark happens, we want to fade out relatively smoothly, so that we have the first spark. Now, each and every spark is the exact same particle system, copy and paste it over. So for every other spark, I just want to copy and paste the original keyframes, and and just pop them in there. Okay, so now I'm going to turn all of the other lights off, just so that I can get a very smooth playback of these sparks, because all the lights slows the system down a little bit too much for me to be entirely accurate. So here we go. There we go. I think that looks really good, actually. Alright, so now that we have the sparks light set, I think that one is pretty good, set in stone. No need to work with that anymore. Now, I'm going to create another light. Now, this is light number 6. You gotta keep in mind, Source Filmmaker can only handle 9 lights at any given time. So keep track of how many lights you're using with shadows. Now, light number 6, I'm going to call it Alarm Base, because this one will be aimed directly at the alarm. Turn it off just for a sec while I center it. Zoom it in to a good place. Turn it back on. Let's see what we got. Bring the light down. And I want to make it red. Very, very red. Now keep in mind that perfect bright red doesn't blend very well usually. I've never experienced red being able to blend particularly well. It just over brightens everything. So I think, let's see, decrease that, quadratic. I think that will do for now. Now this one requires sound, so I'm going to turn the sound back on and do the same thing as we did with the spark light. And only activate it when the alarm sounds. So that's when the alarm is at its peak, so I'm going to bring it down here to a random spot. I can adjust it later, of course. Turn the intensity off. It's a little bit too late, so I'm going to bring it up. Too early, I mean. I'm going to bring it forward. Let's see. Okay, now I'm going to turn the light off, and I want the light to sustain the same brightness for a short time. So I'm going to put a keyframe, another keyframe right along the line, and if you can see, for some reason, Source Filmmaker decides to curve this line, and I want the light to stay just as bright as it should be, constantly at that peak. So I'm going to select both lights and click this linear tangent button. And what that does is just, it allows the points, the keyframes, to corner very sharply. And that'll straighten out the line indefinitely. So let's see what we got here. Okay, I think that looked pretty good, but I'm gonna look at it again without lights so I can get a better feel for it. Now let's see, it was a little bit early, so I'm gonna drag these two back just a little bit more. Alright, I think that's what we want, so I'm gonna copy all of this and paste it down when the next alarm happens. And continue to do so. Okay, let's see. That last one's a little early. There we go. A little early on that one too. Not much. Just a little adjustment there. Okay, let's see from the main camera. Alright. So that light is basically done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy the alarm base light and paste it back in there. And rename it Alarm Fill, because the alarm light is supposed to be pretty bright, so I'm just going to copy and paste the light and make it fill the entire room with its redness, because that's necessary, because we need all that redness to fill the entire room. So let's see. Now you'll see that the light, this fill light, if I turn all the others on, is not going to be strong enough to actually make a noticeable difference in the scene. And adjusting the intensity up will just make the light on always. So you see the slight redness over there, it's always on. And I don't think you'd want that, because only the light's only supposed to be visible when it's flashing. So I'm going to undo that. Press escape to delete the movement. Gotta move the light back. Silly light, move. Okay. Back in place. Now I'm going to increase the quadratic attenuation for when the light is on. That will make the light a little bit more visible, and if that's not enough, very ever so slightly adjust the linear attenuation up, because that one is very powerful. Linear attenuation is strong, as you can obviously tell all over this place. So turn the shadows all the way down. See, now we have a fair bit of lighting there. As you can see, the red light is now visible everywhere. So let's see what we got going on here. Actually, I'll turn the sound on. That subtle redness in the back, that's actually exactly what I was looking for, so that's perfect. Now, you consider the place, this building is noticeably being bombed, so I'm actually going to go through and actually, that blueness, if you can see that blueness, I don't know if my device can pick up that ever so subtle blueness. That right there is what I like to call negative light. Anything light could be negative, but it can, and that's that little dip that Source Filmmaker likes to create. So if you just cut that attenuation, the tangents, is that? Yeah, the linear tangent on. You just turn that on, you'll get rid of that easily for both lights. I don't know why it does it. I changed it to linear so it doesn't do that, but it does it anyways. But it's not as bad as flying, so sometimes it's not noticeable. So, whatever. Anyways, moving on. Since the place is being bombed, I'm going to actually animate this light up here. And I'm actually gonna turn it off and on a few times after the bombs hit. So, let's see, the first bomb hits right here, so I'm gonna turn it off and back on. Actually gonna keep the light at the same level as the other one, and I'm just gonna copy these two frames, these two keyframes, and place them haphazardly anywhere else that I feel like could use an extra little spark. Get the linear tangents going. Alright, so I'm going to copy all of these frames and paste them onto this one. Just make it exactly the same. So if we look at just these two lights and no others, just get some pretty serious flashing lights over here. So, and since there's a second bomb that hits, I'm going to do the same thing over here as well. Boom. Easy. Copy and pasting frames. Did I move it? I think I moved it. Okay. You can also use the brackets to quickly switch between keyframes. I find that to be extremely useful if you lose your place. So let's see. I'm actually going to add another little spark right here. Just copy those frames and paste them over on the next one. On the first one, of course, because that's important. It's very important that I keep them synced up. Alright, so that fill light might make a bit of a problem, so I'm actually gonna... Let me see. Copying the intensity over might be a problem, but I'm gonna do it anyways. It over brightens the fill light. Actually gonna set a frame up right here so that I can keep the brightness. Now, paste the, oops, my bad. Paste the old one, the old keyframes there, and actually going to copy, actually Control X that frame, that keyframe, and just Control V it on all the other, every other keyframe so that I can keep the brightness the same. Did I just, yeah, just screw that up. Okay. That's supposed to be off, on, yeah, okay. Off, on, off, on, off, on. Here we go. Now that we have that set up, the scene will go completely dark when the light turns off and come completely back on, vice versa. So, I'm gonna get on that frame over there and just paste the intensity animation back over here, just like that. And then one more thing, I'm gonna grab right here and do the same thing once again. I'm actually gonna select, go back and forth real quick while I get the keyframes, just to make sure that they sync up, because I want these lights to sync up pretty good. Alright, turn it off. There we go. So let's see how that looks. I think we have a winner. Yes, I think that is truly a winner. Let's see what we got. All lights on. Mind you, this will be very slow, because computer doesn't like running so many lights at any given time. Now, I think actually I want to get rid of this redness over here in the corner. So the alarm fill, I'm actually going to point it more towards the soldier, just to light him up, and maybe the console. It's too bright too, so we need to bring that down. Alright, the alarm base could stand to be a bit brighter. Not too much. I think that should do it. So, I think that's about it for animating the lights themselves and making them flicker and whatnot. So, now that I'm done with those main lights, I actually set up the entire scene earlier. See, it's got the focal distance and the aperture all set up, ready to go. But I haven't done the ambient occlusion because I think ambient occlusion is basically another form of lighting. So, I'm going to do the ambient occlusion for you here right now too. So I like to single out the ambient occlusion because it makes it a lot easier to work with. So I'm going to bring our bias up pretty high. From what I've learned, bias is how close or far it'll get to the edges of the geometry or the model. So the higher it is, the smoother it'll be, but turning it up too high will bring it too far from the edges and it'll look unnatural. So I'm going to bring this about halfway up. I'm going to bring the strength up just a little bit and the radius down quite a bit. I want to adjust these ever so slightly together because radius and strength kind of work hand in hand. So I think that'll do. So if I go back, turn the ambient occlusion solo off. See, let's go to a nice frame with the siren on all the way. Right there. See what we got. Alright. So I think that looks pretty darn good. So I'm going to render this out as it is and basically call it done. So I hope you learned a little something about some lighting techniques that I use. Now, mind you, these lighting techniques are specific to me. I don't really like lights that are sharp or really like over brightened. I really like to go for a really smooth lighting. That's just me. So in no way is this the only way to light a scene. So use what I say with a grain of salt. It's not perfect, and I'm still learning how to do this stuff just as well as anyone else, just as much as anyone else. So it's a work in progress, basically. So not this scene though. This scene is done. I'm gonna render it out, show you the comparison, no lights versus with all the lights, and I'll see you all later. Next tutorial is gonna be about cinematic effects. Until then, I'll see you later.